as Charles G says, Bryce Young is broken. Unfortunately, that's the case. I mean, there are Panthers beat writers, I think it was Joe Person, basically saying Dave Canales has to bench Bryce Young for the sake of the locker room, for the sake of his confidence. I'm rarely in that camp that you have to, save the locker room for a team that looks terrible. But man, I do wonder if like a little mental break. They talked about this when Mac Jones was struggling a lot in New England. The local radio was talking about, does he need a mental break? A mental break. Belichick's like, what are you talking about? We have week 3. We have week 4. We have week 5. Do they actually need a mental break here for Bryce Young in the Panthers?
So to me, I do think that they probably need to bench him. I don't think that either of the two arguments that you just made would be the compelling one to me. What I think you need to bench him for is I want to get a baseline on what the rest of the upgrades that you made this offseason have actually done, right? I now don't know, because Bryce Young is such a catastrophe back there, how good is my offensive line right now? How good are my receivers that are theoretically upgraded across the board? I can't tell what the rest of the offense looks like because Bryce Young is just making a mess out of every play. There were a bunch of those plays where there's initial pressure, Young gets out of the pocket, and you're like, okay, make a play, find somewhere to go with the football, do anything other than take a sack. And he just ends up slowly taking a sack. And it's so predictable now. I think they need to put Andy Dalton in there and just establish a baseline of what everything else looks like, right? Even if it's only 2 or 3 games, just figure out what everyone else looks like and then go, okay, now we know what this offense is. Bryce Young can come back in and let's see if we can create something that actually functions for him and give him the rest of the season. Because ultimately, there's no point not playing Bryce Young other than the fact that right now it's so bad, it's literally achieving nothing.
Look, I'm always a believer that the franchise should do whatever they can to maximize the ability of their quote franchise quarterback. And look, we might be at the end of the season and it's like, doesn't matter. Bryce Young's gone. Right. There's no way they can, roll with him in year 3. They have to move on. But the same way New England, people were questioning why they were giving Drake May 30% of the reps during practice when he's not the starter, and the starter usually takes 95% of the reps. I'm over there like applauding that because the Patriots go as far as Drake May goes in the future. So the Panthers right now, they go as far as Bryce Young goes, or they're drafted another quarterback. So just throwing them to the wolves every week doesn't help. Maybe it is time to look. The plan is for 3 weeks or whatever it is, Bryce Young, go learn how to do this behind Andy Dalton. Go learn and watch, and hopefully you come back stronger. And if you don't, look, we all have to move on after this year anyway.
Right. If you're done, if it doesn't, he's done anyway. You're drafting at the top of the draft. It doesn't make a difference. The only, if you're of the opinion that you keep him out there now because, what's the point in starting Andy Dalton? The question I would ask in reply to that is simply, do you think there's any chance right now, based off what we've seen, that he can pull himself out of this tailspin? Because if you don't, then you might as well, maybe the break can do that. Maybe some kind of hard reset sitting on the sidelines for 2 weeks can do something. Because right now, I don't think there's any chance that he just spontaneously drags himself out of this. He is in a mess. He's in a funk right now. Something needs to change. And even if that's sitting him down for a couple of weeks, I agree. At the point where you're deciding your franchise quarterback actually needs to be benched for his own sake, like Mac Jones, the chances of you ever being the guy after that, I think, are probably pretty small. But the chances of you being the guy at the end of this, if we just keep persisting, I think are basically zero.